Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brian Koletka, and I am the Director of Transportation Policy. Welcome to the MPO Board Funding Workshop. I want to thank Board Member Karn for his questions about our funding and process. Being a gentleman of science, he is question-driven, and his questions provided the genesis for this workshop. Some workshop housekeeping. To make everybody's experience the best it can be, please mute your microphone unless speaking. To mute and unmute on a phone, dial *6. For via Zoom, there is a toolbar at the bottom that has some controls for the user. One of those tools is to raise your hand. To ask a question, please raise your virtual hand. If you are on a phone, dial *9 to raise your virtual hand. There are many people on this Zoom meeting, so if you physically raise your hand like this, we are going to assume that you are either swatting away a fly or you have detected an offensive odor. So the only way you can get recognized is raising your virtual hand. Oops. Okay, Rebecca, can we go back one slide? Here are our goals for the workshop. We got one more slide back, please. Okay, it looks like a slide was cut. That's my mistake.
Actually, we're heading forward. We need to go backwards, Rebecca.
Just a moment.
Ma'am. Great. So here are our goals for this workshop. We want you to have a better understanding of the Broward MPO funding process. We would like you to identify new opportunities for local project funding and take those opportunities back to your commission or council. We want you to talk with your peers and share your thoughts with your staff so that your staff will engage the MPO and start working on projects to enhance your community. Finally, to provide you with a new process and possibility to deliver your projects faster and with a possible lower cost. Can you move forward one slide, please? Thank you. This is our agenda. We have broken our presentations into 4 different groups. Following each presentation group, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. Following the first 2 groups will be a brief 5-minute break. The third presentation will be performed by our partners at District 4, Florida Department of Transportation. And our final presentation will be performed by our Executive Director, Mr. Stewart, and Deputy Executive Director of Planning and Programming, Mr. Cross. Next slide, please. So here are our core products, or what I call the mandatory minimums required by law. We have the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is our long-range plan. From that plan, we extract a priorities list called the Multimodal Priorities List. We take the priorities list, a set of projects to be funded in the 5-year plan known as the Transportation Improvement Program. These plans are made possible by the task in our budget known as the Unified Planning Work Program, which also funds our strategic business plan. Finally, everything that we do at the MPO is guided by public participation as outlined in our public participation plan. I would like to introduce Mr. Peter Gies to present our first presentation on the Metropolitan Transportation Plan.
Thank you very much, Brian. Appreciate the introduction and also appreciate the opportunity to present to members of the public and also board members who've come here to learn a little bit more about how we fund our projects. I know, Rebecca, it seems as though you've given me control. Let me see if I can go ahead. Yep, that's moving forward, which is great. So as Brian mentioned at the beginning of, or during his introduction, is that we have 3 core products: the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the Multimodal Priorities List, and the Transportation Improvement Program. Now, a lot of times at board meetings, we present on these individual products separately, but the goal of today's presentations is to show you how these products all fit together. Personally, for me, I like to call the 3 blue squares here on the screen, the conveyor belt of project delivery, where if you're reading it from left to right, on the left-hand side, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan provides you the initial set of projects, and everything that is going to be funded with federal or state funds from a project perspective must be in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and that's how we develop our Multimodal Priorities List and Transportation Improvement Program. So for this presentation, I'm going to focus on the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. It is an MPO core product, as Brian mentioned, and it has a 25-year planning horizon. And again, I'm going to reiterate that all MPO projects and programs that are funded with federal or state funding must be listed in the MTP in order to receive funding and move on to implementation. Now, it's very important to remember that the Metropolitan Transportation Plan is the 30,000-foot level, so it's way up here. We're doing long-range planning. We're asking for projects that may be 25 years out in this case. But the good news is that this long-range plan is updated every 5 years. And the reason why we update the plan every 5 years is in order to incorporate new demographic information, new transportation information, so that we can get our new forecasts and then also identify new projects in order to meet future needs. So while it does have a 25-year horizon, we update it every 5 years. And ideally, every 5 years, you shouldn't see a massive update. And I'm gonna quote our chief of staff here, Michael Ronskevitz. He always says, you know, generally you want to maybe change the plan a little bit, but it shouldn't be a full rework of the plan every 5 years. We set a goalpost out 25 years into the future, and we want to try and meet that. We may zigzag along the way. So here's an overview of the revenues that are available in the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So this is a 20-year forecast of the revenues for state and federal funding. As you can see, the total amount is $12.75 billion. And again, that's made up of a variety of different federal and state funding sources. We've obviously grouped them here all together, but in a simplified manner, you can see the general breakdown between state and federal funding and MPO attributable funding, which is the funding in the dark blue area here, which we actually have direct control over. So when the MPO board votes on projects, let's say in the Complete Streets and Localized Initiatives program, or votes for MPO priorities, oftentimes it involves that section of the funding pie chart there, the $540 million. And this became a big topic of conversation when we updated the Metropolitan Transportation Plan this year, because we know that the funding in the light blue, the $7.41 billion, is largely spoken for in the sense that it is typically spent on highway capacity or roadway capacity projects. The $540 million can be spent on anything from transit to capacity projects to bicycle pedestrian projects to a host of other things. And we wanted to make sure that we were being thoughtful this cycle about how we program those $540 million, because they really help you leverage other funding in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So here's an overview of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan funding programs. And for the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, we departed from the usual structure of just grouping all the projects together under one cost feasible plan. And we decided to break the projects up into 6 funding programs. Now, these 6 funding programs should seem very familiar to you because you've probably heard of some of them, including the Complete Streets and Other Localized Initiatives programs and the Complete Streets Master Plan. These are plans that we do in-house at the MPO to identify bicycle and pedestrian projects at a regional scale and then also at a local scale through our annual Complete Streets and Other Localized Initiatives program process. In addition to those 2 programs, we have the Roadway and Transit program, which consume quite a bit of the funding that is allocated through the funding forecast that I showed you in the previous pie chart. And then we also have the Transportation System Management and Operations and Safety program, which is a new program we established as part of the MPO. And then also the Mobility Hub program, which we are also currently standing up, but we've already funded some projects under that program. The TSM&O and Safety program is really a push to try and meet our Vision Zero goals and allocate funding specifically for projects that address safety, but also help move us into the future with smart technology on our signal system and support a lot of the work that the Florida Department of Transportation is doing in that regard. So a little bit more information about how we divided up the funds for the individual funding programs. Remember the $540 million that I showed in the previous slide on the pie chart? Well, this is the percentage allocation that we asked the board to provide us guidance on as to how much funding should be allocated to each program. And these are funding targets. So we want to try and utilize our $540 million wisely and make sure that each piece of the funding programs are getting their fair share of the funding. And it's also based largely on the existing funding that is out there, whether it be from the transportation surtax or whether it be from the Florida Department of Transportation. So the funding allocations that you see here were part of a long discussion of how we complement the available funding that exists in Broward right now for our transportation projects. And this is the percentages that we agreed upon, and we are working with the Florida Department of Transportation to meet those targets when it comes to the allocation of our MPO attributable funding. So a little bit more about the funding programs. I'm not going to get into too much detail here, but the two main programs that we have as part of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan are the roadway program, which funds road and highway capacity projects on the state, county, or local network. And our transit program, which funds transit capital projects. And I'm going to emphasize the capital piece here because unfortunately, as part of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, we can't fund any operations and maintenance. So these are strictly capital projects identified in the MTP. And all projects that are included in this portion of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan were subject to the project prioritization process that was established as part of the MTP, and also are subject to financial feasibility, which means that we need to take into account the financial forecast that I showed you in the previous pie chart when we're allocating funding for these different programs. It's also worth noting that the type of funding affects how much money is available for each program. Because I remember I mentioned that the light blue portion of the pie chart, which includes $7.41 billion of FDOT state funding, is largely for capacity projects. So a lot of that funding ends up in the roadway program. So again, these programs make up the majority of the projects in our MTP, and they are subject to the prioritization process and that financial feasibility assessment. Now, one thing I do want to add for this cycle as well, we've come up with an annual MTP amendment process, which is how you can actually amend projects into the current 2045 MTP without waiting for the next 5-year cycle update. So since this is an annual update, we are going to allow projects to be submitted to the MPO on November 10th of each year. And that allows us to do all the federally required steps in order to amend a project into the MTP. Now, the reason why I placed this slide after the roadway and transit program is because by and large, most of the MTP amendments that are going to be required will be for projects in the roadway and transit section. These are projects that are capacity type projects or large transit infrastructure projects that require right-of-way and environmental analysis, and therefore they require quite a bit of federal oversight as well, and hence why we have this process to amend the MTP to make sure that we're keeping the plan whole and that we're also being transparent in that process. Moving on to the 4 remaining programs, the TSM&O and safety program I mentioned already funds existing signal network and critical safety projects that we're looking to fund. The Complete Streets Master Plan, which was adopted a few years ago at the MPO, that provides funding for that program to fill in regional bicycle and pedestrian gaps in our infrastructure. The Complete Streets and Other Localized Initiatives program, which is our annual program that locals have the ability to apply for funding through. This has been a very successful program, and of course having it in the MTP ensures that we can continue funding it. And likewise for the mobility hubs has also been a rather successful program. We've funded quite a few mobility hub improvements, and the program is being reworked at the moment so that we can have either an annual or biannual competitive application process for funding as part of that. Now, by and large, as I mentioned in the previous slide, where MTP amendments are needed for the roadway and transit program, MTP amendments are not required here. Since these plans go before the MPO board for approval and are more programmatic in nature, we take these plans before the board for any projects that are being amended in there. So for example, like the Complete Streets and Other Localized Initiatives plan, we bring that every year to the board to show which projects are being funded and get approval from that. So those do not require MTP amendments unless we are changing the funding amounts for those programs. But if you as a local municipality are looking to apply for a project, let's say for the Mobility Hub or CSLIP program, that is not going to require an MTP amendment. So the slide that I would like to end on is address the elephant in the room and look at the MTP funding versus SURTAX and show you this chart to emphasize that the amount of funding that is available through the MTP, through the MPO attributable funding, that $540 million over that 20-year period, is at an equal and sometimes even larger funding level than what the SURTAX offers. So this is really good news for municipalities because while everybody's chasing SURTAX funding in order to get their projects funded, we all know that that is also a 30-year plan, and every project is not going to get funded in the first 5 years. Well, luckily, if a project as part of the SURTAX isn't funded in a time frame that the city would like to work with, you do have the option to work through the MPO's programs, whether it be Complete Streets and Localized Initiatives, or let's say the roadway program or the Mobility Hubs program, in order to get your project funded sooner. Now, there's no guarantee, once again, because you have to go through the project prioritization process for the respective program, but it does allow us to leverage different types of funding here in Broward in order to build the transportation future we would like to see. And I think it's very exciting now that we've essentially doubled our funding amount. And this is basically an aggregate bar chart that shows the available funding over the next 5 years. And you can see the MPO is basically on par with the SURTAX when it comes to the available funding through the 5-year plan. So again, not to despair if you are not getting funding for a project that you would like to see as part of the 5-year plan, please know that the MPO is always there to help and assist with funding through our other various plans and programs. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Zhihong Chen and Christopher Restrepo, who are going to take you through the next piece of the MPO pipeline process, the Multimodal Priorities List and Transportation Improvement Program, and show you how projects get taken from the MTP through to the Multimodal Priorities List and then ultimately programmed in the Transportation Improvement Program. Zhihong?
Hi, Peter. Thank you, Peter. Board members, most welcome guests. Good afternoon. I'm Zhihong Chen, Project Programming Manager with the Broward MPO. Peter just talked about the Long-Range Transportation Plan, also called MTP, Metropolitan Transportation Plan. You may wonder, what are those projects in the Long-Range Transport Plan goals? Actually, the Broward MPO move those projects forward towards the implementation through MMPL and Transportation Improvement Program. Next, I'm going to talk about Multimodal Priority List and the Transportation Improvement Program. Each spring, the Broward MPO processes a multimodal priority list. Actually, it's an annual routine process. It's not new. You may wonder, what is a multimodal priority list? Multimodal priority list is a series of projects in numerical order. Those projects are getting funding following this order. You may have seen these core products for many times. Multimodal priorities list is one of the core products. This slide shows MPO's planning process. As Peter just said, the Broward MPO updates Metropolitan Transportation Plan every 5 years. After the MTP approved, projects in the MTP move to multimodal priority list. After the board approves the multimodal priority list, FDOT uses the multimodal priority list to program projects into the draft tentative work program based upon available revenues. The FDOT releases the draft tentative work program each fall and the Broward MPO approves the draft tentative work program each fall as well. The Broward MPO uses the database derived from the work program to prepare a TIP and approves the TIP in July. The process from MPO to TIP occurs on a yearly basis. This slide shows critical steps for developing the MPO. Bottom half of the chart indicates the process that Broward MPO develops the MPO. The major steps in the process include Broward MPO staff collecting project information, producing the first draft of the MPO, and sending the first draft to FDAT for their review, discussing the draft with FDAT staff, and finally, we produce the final draft MPO for board, TAC, and CAC to review. The upper half of the chart shows the process that Broward MPO's committees and board members review and approve the MPO. The Broward MPO staff presents the MPO at TAC, CAC board meetings. After the board approves the MPO, the Broward MPO sends the MPO to FDAT before August 1st each year. Let's take a look at the big picture of the MPO. The MPO serves as a bridge between Metropolitan Transportation Plan and Transportation Improvement Program. The MPO is organized by MTP funding program. The MPO tracks funds by phase and funding source. In addition to that, the MPO monitors project progress and project readiness. I also want to mention that the Broward MPO staff introduced a new format for the MPO last year. The new format increased transparency by including more information on projects. My colleague, Christopher Restropel, will show you the approved MPO with new format on MPO's website later. You have seen these 6 funding programs during the Peter's presentation. Just as I said earlier, the MPO is organized by MTP funding program, and the percentage on this slide are used to distribute Broward MPO's attributable funds. I mentioned earlier, the MPO also monitors project program readiness. What does program readiness mean? Meeting the 4 criteria on this slide counts program readiness. To become program ready, a project has to have clear scope of work, approved resolution for support, cost estimates, and partner collaboration. The Broward MPO staff has been working with municipalities, county, planning partners to make projects on the MPO program ready. So next, I'm going to talk about the Transportation Improvement Program. As opposed to MTP, the TIP is a 5-year program. We can also call it a short plan. It prioritizes and documents the fundings of transportation improvement projects. Those projects are expected to be built over the next 5 years. The TIP includes heavy projects, such as reconstruction, maintenance, and operation projects. Also include transit and rail projects, such as maintenance and operation projects. Also include aviation seaport projects, bicycle and pedestrian projects. The Broward MPO staff always present the draft transportation improvement program at June, July TAC-CAC board meetings. And the Broward MPO board approved the transportation improvement program in July. Again, this is the core products of the Broward MPO. You can see the transportation improvement program is one of the core products. Products in the TIP are ready for implementation. This slide shows the TIP development process. By following these all steps, by following federal and state guidance. The TIP development starts with Broward MPO receiving TIP in middle April from FDOT every year. And then Broward MPO prepares the draft TIP, run advertisement on newspapers for public notice, makes the document available for public review, starts public comments period, hosts public meetings, approves the draft TIP, and sends it to Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Authority, and FDOT. In general, the MPO board approves the TIP in July, and the Broward MPO sends the final approved TIP before July 15. The new TIP comes into effect on October 1st. The most recent approved TIP is fiscal year 2021 to 2025 TIP. For more information about the new TIP, please visit MPO website. After TIP approved, the TIP may be revised due to change in project status, project cost, and available revenues. Those changes can be either an amendment or a modification. A major change to a project, such as major scope change, significant cost change, deleting or adding projects, triggers an amendment. The Broward MPO and FDOT follow state and federal regulations to identify and process TIP amendments. On the other hand, all other changes not satisfying the TIP amendment criteria are modifications. So Christopher Restrepo will show you how to access MMPL, TIP, and municipal TIP reports. Now I turn the control to Christopher.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Christopher Restrepo. I'm a principal planner for the Broward MPO, and I'm excited to share with you a little thing that might help your review of municipal projects a little bit easier for you to do. So the first thing that I want to share with you is what an actual TIP page looks like, and that's what you see in front of you in the screen right here. What we've done is we've curated municipal reports so that it shows all of the projects that fall within your jurisdictional boundary. So you don't need to scroll through all 500 pages of our transportation improvement program. Instead, you can go to our website, locate your specific municipality, and then download the report yourself and use that in any way that you would like to. But what are you going to find on those pages? The first thing that you're going to find is the financial number, and that's the FM number that falls within the project identification of the project. Not only is it a financial number that ties all that information back to each other, but you also get the project description. So right here on this page, you see that the project is called City of Coconut Creek, various locations. Below that, you'll see a section highlighted as project characteristics. And what you're going to find here are things about the project that gives you more information of what type of project it is. Under work summary, for an example here, this is called bike path and trail, so that you know that this isn't going to be a major roadway project. Instead, it's more bike path related. Below that, you will see lead agency, the limits of the project, the length of the project, and then information on where you can locate this project in relation to our Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Because as you know, projects start in the MTP, fall into the MMPL, which is the priority list, and then into the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP. Underneath project characteristics, you will find financial information. And this is kind of the information you want to pay attention to. As the projects move from year to year, getting closer to being constructed, you'll see that the phases correspond with the year that the money falls under. So in this example on the screen here, you have a PE phase, which is like design, an environmental phase, and then you'll notice that construction isn't here yet because that'll come in later years. After financial information, you find project description. Maybe the project identification, the characteristics didn't give you all the information you're looking for. Below all of that, at the end of the page, you'll find a project description that gives you just a little bit more information about the project itself. And then last but not least, probably the most exciting part of the page is that you have your own map that gives the line diagram of the project itself and where it's located in Broward County. And that's highlighted in the big box where you see a map. Okay, let's go. There we go. Okay, so the next slide. So how do you access all of this information? Well, what I would like to do with y'all right now is share my screen, and then I will take you through the Broward MPO website, where I'll show you where you can access the Transportation Improvement Program, the Multimodal Priority List, the municipal reports, and if you want to get crazy, we can go into the interactive TIP. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Okay, I don't know how to share my screen.
Give me one moment.
Okay. Great. Okay. Sure. Okay, so this is my screen, and if you would like to follow along at home, you can type in browardmpo.org, or you can follow my shared screen right now. And what you're going to do is once you get to our main page, the browardmpo.org, you're going to go under what we do. Under this tab, you'll find our core products to the left. Below the MTP, PPP, you'll find the TIP, Transportation Improvement Program. Click on that link, and it'll take you to the Transportation Improvement Program website. Over here, you'll have an overview of what the TIP is, a brief little description, but what's most important is this highlighted gray box that's called Important Links. Here, you can click on the first link that's available that is titled Transportation Improvement Program Fiscal Year 2021-2025. Up here, you'll always find the latest, most adopted Transportation Improvement Program. By clicking on that, it'll take you to the PDF document that's hosted on our website, where you can scroll through 438 pages of transportation projects. What you'll also find in here is not only our guiding principles, or signatures, or table of contents, but an executive summary. And by getting to this executive summary, you can kind of get an all-in-caps look at what we're programming for the next 5 years. So go through it through your leisure. We present this every year, so it's not new information, but it's information that's always available for you. If you go back to the Transportation Improvement Program webpage, you'll see below that you have the interactive TIP, and what this is it gives you a link to a hosted website that has all those projects saved with all that information, not in a PDF. But what's interesting is you can click Map, and you can scroll through a GIS portal, all the different projects that are located within Broward County that are located within our Transportation Improvement Program. So you can just click on a project any way you want, click on the name of the project, and hit the PDF button so that you can get an individualized report of each project. But we're not going to get super into that. We want things a little bit easier. So if you go back to the TIP webpage, underneath Important Links, below Interactive TIP, you'll see below those two, all of our amendments that are occurring to the Transportation Improvement Program. And as approved today, actually, you'll see that the first amendment is our roll forward report. And that was in today's earlier board meeting. But if you want to see the projects just in your municipality, you can go below that where it says municipal reports, and you'll see in alphabetical order in the tabular format all of the municipalities that have projects located in our Transportation Improvement Program. So clicking on any municipality you like, you can get an overview of the projects that are in there. So let's take Oakland Park. It'll take you to the web page. And then in this report, you'll have a title page. brief description of what you're reading, more or less of what I've explained today, and then steps to download the most recent municipal TIP reports. As you know, this PDF is a snapshot in time. So when they're pulled, it shows all of the information of when that information was pulled. But if you're aware that an amendment happened to a report and you want to get the most up-to-date information, this page will give you step-by-step information of how to download your own proper report through the interactive TIP. And if you get a little lost, you can always contact me and I'll help you walk through it. And then below that, you'll see that the projects are organized by sections. The first section here for Oakland Park is highways. And under highways, you'll get all the individualized project pages within that section. We can go to the next section so I can show you an example of that. There's a lot of projects in Oakland Park. Okay, so you see that the next section is intermodal. So intermodal type projects within that section. And by the way, these sections are organized based off of the Transportation Improvement Program. It's not new organization. And then you'll see all of that. And then we have a miscellaneous category here. So that's an overview of the Transportation Improvement Program and the municipal reports that go with it. Below all the TIP, we'll see that there is multimodal surface transportation priorities and methodology, and that's our multimodal priority list. All the projects that are the phase before the TIP. And here, you can click on the link that's right after the description of the multimodal priority list, and it'll take you to our MMPL report, a PDF version. And like Ji-Hung mentioned before, there's a couple new features that we've added in the priority list. The first is a really good table of contents so you don't get lost. After that, an overview, more or less, of the slides that Ji-Hung presented to you before, of the process that we take to get these documents approved. Our great little bridge graphic with a little further reading, and then a section that tells you how to read the priority list, which we have our priority, our project characteristics, our financial information, funding sources, program readiness, and MTP reference. You notice that there might be a little similarity in organization to our Transportation Improvement Program, and we did that on purpose so that you get used to where information is located. And then after that, we can look at project prioritization. So if you're ever curious of how projects get prioritized in the priority list, there's a little briefing there with further reading and links to that below it. Okay, so let's go to a project example for the priority list. In here, you'll see that the priority is located on the left-hand side of the page, and that'll give you the #1 priority for the program that it's in. Next to it, you'll have the description of the project, type of work, proposed study, all that good stuff, and then below that, you have all the information. So what we're doing with the priority list is we're trying to track the funds as they come through, and any funds that have already been applied, you'll see collected in this section here under amount funded. That's there, and then any funding that's still required for the project to be completed is to the right of that. And then below, you'll see a total project cost estimate. So that's the estimate that we're using to make to verify that the project is fully funded. And then above those two things, we have our little icons of program readiness. Our magnifying glass represents a good scope of work. Our little notepad is a resolution of support. Our little price tag is a cost estimate. And then our 3 people huddled together as collaboration among partners. If a project does not have 3 or 4 green yeses, the project is not program ready and cannot transfer into the Transportation Improvement Program for funding. And that wraps up my presentation on the MMPL and TIP.
Great, thank you, Christopher. So hopefully everyone, this gives you a little bit more of an overview of each step in the process. And I do want to emphasize that the multimodal priorities list is always there to help inform the next transportation improvement program. And it's always pulling projects from the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So it truly is that bridge between the 2 documents. So when these documents come before the MPO board now in the future, hopefully it's a little more clear to you as to how we got to the projects that are included in them. And hopefully provides a little bit more perspective of what may be funded in your municipality. So I think with that, we're ready to open it up for any questions. If we go to the next slide, there's an instruction set on how to ask questions. You can either raise your hand, and I can't remember what number you have to dial on your phone if you would like to raise your hand. Maybe Rebecca is bringing that up. Thank you.
Fine. *9 to raise your hand if you're on your phone. So any attendees in our audience here, if you are interested or want to have any comments or questions, at the bottom of your screen should have the participants icon. You can pull that column up and the raise lower hand icon is there, button is there.
I'm not seeing any questions at the moment. And you can always feel free to email us or contact any one of us. The presentations are up on the MPO website under agendas and minutes.
Great job.
I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. I would like to introduce our next presenter. He is our Complete Streets and Other Localized Initiatives Program Manager. His name is Connor Campobasso, and he's here to dazzle you.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you everybody for having me here today. I'll just wait for the presentation. There we go. All right. I think we should be all set. So my name, as Brian mentioned, is Connor Campobasso, and I am the Complete Streets and Other Localized Initiatives Program Manager. Now, I do want to talk about CSLIP and kind of help guide the conversation from what's already been discussed today to some of the topics that are going to be discussed later on, as well as giving you some information about a funding program here. So you might be wondering why CSLIP specifically. I know there's several other programs here. Well, CSLIP really starts with you all. And if I could, I'm having some issues actually transitioning slides here. Oh, yep, I'm having some problems. Rebecca, I don't.
Technical difficulty where it froze.
Well, if you'd like, in the meantime, I do have the presentation open up on my computer. I could go ahead and share my screen and just run it from there if you'd like.
That's fine.
Okay, perfect. We'll do that. All right, well, I hope you all can see my screen. Assuming so, I'll just get straight into the presentation. So one of the reasons why we chose CSLIP specifically is because it starts with you all. It starts with the local municipalities, it starts with the local government agencies, because these are really local initiative projects. So this program is set up kind of in a grant style in that the local agencies apply for the project through the MPO and are then awarded funds based off a priority list. So you may be wondering what exactly CSLIP funds. So CSLIP funds a variety of things, ranging from complete streets types projects like bike lanes, sidewalks, to enhancement to mobility hubs, technology upgrades, as well as traffic calming and a variety of other aspects in the transportation network. So CSLIP really was derived from a variety of different things, including it really started off with the Transportation Enhancement Program. TE was then ended with the MAP 21 in 2013, and that transitioned into the TAP program. Now, some of you may be familiar with TAP, especially if you're from a different agency or you've been around for a while at the MPO. But essentially, TAP didn't really go anywhere. It still exists today. Some of our other MPO partners still utilize it as a funding mechanism. What we did with CSLIP is we essentially built on top of that. So we still utilize the TAP dollars that are still being dispersed to us, and we kind of combined it with some of our own SU dollars as well as some additional funding that we utilize from time to time. And another benefit of the CSLIP cycle is that it's an annual cycle. So you don't have to wait around for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years for funding. We do cycles every single year. And the process relatively stays the same from time to time. So it all starts out, like I mentioned earlier, with you all working with us, working with DOT to help develop an application. Once the application is developed, we go into the application submittal where you formally submit the application via a application website. Once we receive it, we evaluate and rank projects. Goes to the TAC, goes to the CAC, goes to the board. They approve it, then moves on to the vetting. And that's where we start getting DOT a lot more heavily involved. We work directly with them to help vet the projects, make sure they're feasible, fundable, and overall make sense in the transportation network. After these projects are vetted, we go into the final stage, which is the programming. So going back to developing the application itself. So there's a lot of different ways. The MPO provides assistance, provides help, and some information on how to submit projects. I'll start off with the required one, which is the one-on-one meetings, which we're actually conducting right now. This is a great forum to present the application, potential application to us. We can provide feedback, make sure that these projects are fundable and feasible, and are able to be submitted for potential funding. We also host a workshop where we kind of walk through a variety of different aspects of the CSLIP application. We have a walkthrough video, which actually this year was derived from our workshop because we actually just went straight through the application this year. We also have a variety of helpful documentation, including a checklist, which shows you all the documents that you need to submit. We send out deadline reminders, email blasts. We do presentations like this quite frequently, and we also update the website to reflect new information as soon as possible. And the last thing I have on here is that the MPO staff is always available to assist in any way that we can in helping you build your applications. So once the application is submitted, like I mentioned earlier, it then goes on to the ranking. And the ranking is based off of some very objective criteria that I've displayed on the screen. Essentially, we geocode the projects, we run them through the evaluation tool that we've developed, and it spits out some general rankings. Now, the rankings that we get are pretty raw, and we have to do some manipulation to get them to the final state, which is the ranked list. And this ranked list, which we now call the CSLIP priority list, we then hand over to DOT, and we work directly with DOT to get the vetting done. And just like the CSLIP process itself, the vetting process also has some stages to it. So it all starts off with a pre-review where we take a look at these projects. Then we conduct some site visits to get a real feel for the projects, make sure that they can fit within the confines of the roadway, of the area, and make sure there's no major conflicts. We review the findings with a variety of different staff members from MPO, DOT, as well as some consultant firms from a variety of different backgrounds and professional careers. We then coordinate with the agencies on the findings, and then we do the vetting closeout, which transitions us directly into programming. Now, you probably saw these icons earlier in Peter's presentation, as well as maybe these little bars in other presentations as well. But essentially, CSLIP is, like I mentioned, one of those funding programs that we utilize here at the MPO. And CSLIP itself sits about 20% of the funding allocation. So that 20% is available to you all for your local initiative projects. And the last thing I want to talk about is the project delivery, which is kind of the last stage in the CSLIP cycle or the CSLIP program itself. And that's getting the project designed and in the ground. So in the past, we utilized two separate delivery mechanisms. We had LAP, where the local agencies deliver the projects, and then we had DOT also available to deliver projects. Now, with DOT's new change in direction, which I'm all sure you are familiar with at this point, the only available option right now is LAP. One of the things that we are working on, we've proposed to DOT and we're currently working with them, is the MTech. And now, I won't spend too much time on this because there's going to be some presentations on both of these later on today. But I did want to mention those just as a concept or as a reference point, I guess, for the conversation later. So with that, that's really all I have for my presentation, and I'll open it up to any questions that you may have. And I'll unshare my screen, Rebecca, if you want to pull up the slide. Terrific.
I'm not seeing anything in the attendees list. If you guys have any questions, please raise your hand.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Campobasso, for your presentation.
Sure thing. Thank you.
At this time, we are going to take a 5-minute break. And after we return from that 5-minute break, we're going to give you a very short video about the magic of freight before we go on to the third presentation for today.
We take it for granted, but our lives are dependent on freight. The items we consume daily come to us by air, sea, truck, and rail. Freight keeps the global economy thriving, provides millions of jobs, grows businesses, and helps families enjoy a standard of living. The magic of freight, keeping our economy strong. This message is brought to you by the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Thank you for that short film. We are honored that our FDOT District 4 partners are here for our next presentation. I would like to introduce Mr. Steve Braun, who is the Director of Transportation Development. I would also like to introduce Mr. John Crane, who is FDOT's Planning and Environmental Administrator. Gentlemen.
Hi, good afternoon. Steve, you with us? Let me check. You're muted if you're talking, Steve. I think he saw the break until 2 and he was running right up to the end.
Can you guys hear me?
There we go.
Yep. Sorry. All right, we're ready to go. I did take a quick break here. I thought you were queued up to do a quick freight video. You already played that?
You could do it again, Steve. It's awesome.
No, that's fine. I'm sorry. You know, I'm actually in the office today. It takes me longer to go to the bathroom and back than when I'm at home. So I apologize. It's a longer walk down the. Yeah. No, just the walk, Greg. No, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about that. So as maybe has already been introduced, I'm the Director of Transportation Development here in District 4, Steve Braun. Certainly, you know, I commend the MPO board and staff for putting on this workshop today. And John Crane and myself, you know, we have a presentation and we appreciate the opportunity to participate. I think in normal times, I guess, a workshop on funding would certainly be worth the price of admission. Unfortunately, we're not quite in normal times, right? So we're facing the challenges of all facets of the pandemic, including funding, right? So I think the timing of this workshop is important. So before we get into our presentation on LAP, I just wanted to touch on a couple of key points and then I'll hand off to John. So a lot of the previous presentations kind of have led to, you know, the different programs, the long range planning process, the annual prioritization. So the DOT, you know, we're in the midst of our work program development cycle. We've received those MPO priorities from the MPO, and we're really waiting for our allocations from central office. And we're working towards obviously trying to address some of the anticipated revenue reductions. You know, and as this board has heard, and certainly MPO staff has heard, we're projecting significant revenue losses, right? Even beyond the 5-year work program. So, you know, just order of magnitude, right? We're talking about $1.3 billion in lost revenue, you know, between now and fiscal year 25 and 26. And statewide, that really translates to about $760 million of allocations reduction in current year. So, you know, I think we're all scratching our head, really trying to see how best to mitigate those revenue impacts. And I think some of the approach we're taking, really kind of a hierarchy of how we're going to continue programming projects, at least this cycle, right? Top of the order, right? Outstanding commitments, debt service, and then obviously safety, and then preservation. And within preservation, you've got bridge projects, bridge replacements, maintenance, and resurfacing. And then after that, really towards the bottom of that hierarchy, capacity and other needs. So I just wanted to kind of just give since I had at least the opportunity just to present to this group in the context of the funding workshop, to share kind of where we stand on that. I think Peter mentioned earlier, right, the DOT being part of that conveyor belt to project delivery, I think you had said, Peter. So again, we pride ourselves on our partnership with the MPO and other local municipalities in the county, and in delivering projects, right, transportation projects. So I think this opportunity here to talk through how we fund and program and ultimately implement projects is a great workshop. So just to set the stage for John Crane, over recent years, we've seen really that emphasis on complete streets, local initiative projects, those off-system projects that were mentioned before. So when I say off-system, right, not on the state highway system. And I think we've had resources available, over several years now at the department, as well as our expertise on managing projects, on delivering projects, design, construction. And I think it's been a success story, right? We've had implementation, construction complete. I think I'm going to say dozens, right? 20 to 25 completed off-system projects through some of these programs. $60 million in completed off-system projects, primarily bike and ped improvements on local streets, right? We saw that kind of buzz of complete streets. We understood that need, and again, we had the resources available. But over the last, I'm going to say, a year or so, we've been working closely with MPO staff, really on seeing what is the optimum way to for us collectively, right? The partnership that's involved in delivering these projects as part of that conveyor belt. What's the best way to deliver these off-system projects? So we are moving forward with a different approach, but it's probably closer to the approach, kind of pre the last 7+ years where DOT was doing that implementation. So I'm going to hand off to John Crane, really just to give you a little bit of a summary of the considerations that went into this approach, and then really give an outline of the path forward on these off-system projects. So with that, sorry to get long-winded, but I wanted to at least frame in this funding synopsis really where we stand as far as our work program delivery. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. Rebecca, if you could call it up again. There we go. So I've titled the presentation, The Off-System Project Delivery, Bridging the Gap with LAP. Next slide, please. Oh, even gonna, try this. So, why the change? I think Steve alluded to it, resources. In the recent year, the department's resurfacing, restoration, and rehabilitation program, or 3R projects as we call them, have tripled. In that same amount of time, the DOT's gone through quite a turnover in both experienced staff as well as, staff in general. And so that's kind of created this gap where we have less experienced staff managing more projects, and we've kind of got this gap now of being able to address those local projects. And so we believe we can, we've worked with the MPO to try and figure out how we're going to do that, and we're going to bridge that gap with LAP. So, very sensitive. What is LAP? LAP is the local agency. Wait, this is why. The local agency program. It's a method used for the agencies to deliver federally funded projects. It provides the subrecipient cities, towns, counties, villages, federal funds to construct transportation facilities. FDOT acts for FHWA in this role to manage and be the stewards of those federal funds. And the local agencies fund the local projects and then are eligible for the reimbursement of the services that they provide through compliance with the federal regulations that FDOT is providing the oversight for. So now kind of talking a little bit about what's the difference between an FDOT administered process where we manage all phases and the LAP process. In terms of new project phases, when you all give us your multimodal priority list, that project, when FDOT is administering it will go into the 5th year of the work program. So what does that mean? Well, the project has to be designed. Therefore, the first phase that's going to go into the 5th year of the work program, once you've identified it, is going to be the design phase. And so the construction phase happens for us then 3 years after that. So your priority projects will become construction complete in 8 years. So the LAP is actually a faster project completion process. Project costs. FDOT administered design and CEI requires hiring pre-qualified consultants. And FDOT requires FDOT specifications and standards. Typically, what does that mean is higher contract rates for those services because they have to be pre-qualified and no knowledge of the professional process or the FHWA process. And following the DOT Green Book standards for off-system roads is typically a little bit more onerous and maybe a little bit more costly. Locals can use their GC design consultants. They might already have a library of services contract available, and they can primarily use local specs and standards. So LAP also equals reduced project costs through those lower contract rates and less onerous construction methods. So we've taken a look at what, trying to ground truth the cost issue and why, is it really true? We have hypothesized that it's less costly, but looking at the projects over last 10 years or 9 years or so from 2010 to 2019, we looked at all those projects that were administered in Broward County through the LAP process, and there were $71 million in LAP production, and that's just construction costs. That equated to 69 projects, an average of $1 million per job, and the bulk of those in terms of scope were sidewalk and bike lane projects. Similarly, we looked at the FDOT administered off-system projects in Broward County, and Steve alluded to it earlier in his discussion. That was about $62 million in FDOT construction-only funds, equated to about 22 projects, an average of $3 million per job. Again, the bulk of those, but for equitable comparison, were bike lane and sidewalk projects. But a special note is the PE costs were $28 million. That's 45% of the construction cost, and CEI costs were $11 million. So with the LAP process, you actually get more projects to construction because of those lower contract costs. Also, well, we'll go back here. In terms of FDOT doing a job, so we're kind of like a sledgehammer to do a construction project. So certain projects we're more suited for, and the locals are more suited for the local type projects. So what elements is DOT really best suited for? Major widening projects, typically that require right-of-way PD&E projects. That's something we do well. We do it all the time. Works great for us. Bridge projects, major structural projects when it's structurally deficient. We do those all the time with our preservation. So, we're certainly suited to do those types of projects. But the locals are much better at local roadway improvement projects such as sidewalks and bike lanes, complete streets. They're a lot closer to their communities. They know who the key people are to reach out into the communities. And we've often been criticized, when we do our public outreach, it's not, in sync with the locals process. So the locals really are better prepared and more in sync with being able to do that public outreach for these types of projects. Also, for these off-system projects, there's often properties or residences that tend to extend into the right-of-way. So the local agency is better suited to maybe obtain an easement or maybe a right-of-way swap. You can't really do that with the federal DOT process. So what are the benefits of LAP? Faster project delivery. The construction gets programmed in the 5th year instead of the 8th year. Reduced project costs. There's no state qualifications, the lower contract rates for design and CEI. And the focus on construction projects. We're getting more projects to the ground. So how are we going to meet that? That gap is bridge the gap with LAP. There we go. It's a very sensitive mouse on my end. So just a couple things to point out. You know, local agencies, if they're going to do a LAP project, need to commit to the delivery process before the project can be programmed. This is done through a resolution and a delivery commitment. This helps ensure the stability of the work program over time. Local agencies also must become project certified for each project, construction and construction administration. This helps ensure the local agency's financial and staffing ability of complying with federal regulations. And then projects with multiple jurisdictions will need to identify a single lead agency to administer that LAP project. So if we have a project that happens to run through 3 municipalities, there will have to be upfront a commitment by one of those agencies to lead that project, or perhaps a project could be led by the county, or I think you'll hear another option after this presentation as well. But this helps ensure the efficient and effective project delivery. Whoa. In District 4, local agencies contribute to the project realization by funding the design and CEI costs. This ensures maximum funding is available for those construction phases, which are the more expensive phases. Locals can manage 1, maybe 2 projects per fiscal year based on the agency's workload. And this is just kind of what we've found over time works best. This helps ensure project delivery success from design through construction. And then I've posted up here on the presentation a link to the local agency program manual. It's kind of it gives you all the essentials on the LAP program. I'm not going to read it out, but you'll have the handout for this that will allow you to get to the LAP program manual. Any questions?
If you have a question, please just raise your virtual hand.
There is one right now.
Yep.
You want me to call them out, or are you guys going to call them out? How's that going to work?
Hello.
Salvador, you're welcome to speak.
Oh, hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Salvador Zuniga from the city of Miramar. Yeah, and basically, city of Miramar is very sad to hear this. We were at the last meeting, and I'm just going to express the same concerns that I had, which was the projects that are already on the DOT 5-year work program. My understanding is those projects still, after fiscal year 22, they're going to be turned over to the cities to be delivered through LAP, or just the construction cost. And my concern is when our city officials provided support for these projects and endorse the delivery of these projects by FDOT, was the understanding that design and CEI was going to be covered by through MPO and FDOT. So that is still not the case. So now it's going to put an impact on the city, that the city is now going to have to come with design and CEI cost.
So, you know, I think your understanding is correct, but I just make a little adjustment on what you said. You know, we basically are going to a LAP process from year 1 in the work program, right? So there were projects also in fiscal years 21 and 22 that design was planning to be done by DOT. We will not be doing that design. We're turning that over to LAP, but we will pay and reimburse for that design as long as the municipality is you know, up for the challenge and gets themselves certainly LAP certified to do the projects, the commitment to do it, and then we will reimburse it. But yes, that you are correct. From 23 on, any project that was identified for LAP is going to have to be programmed by that time. We figured, hopefully, we worked with the MPO to try and come up with, you know, the best way to do this. We understand, you know, everybody's kind of going through a little bit of a funding crunch right now, but we were, I guess, hopeful that by identifying it in the 3rd year of the work program, that it would be something that a municipality would be able to hopefully plan for. We will still absorb the largest cost ticket item, which is the construction phase, and that the design and CEI would be able to be borne by that agency. But you are correct with that aspect.
Okay, so and then I guess there will be one-on-one meetings with municipalities to look at the projections of these projects, because there might be some projects that are gonna overlap, like there's gonna be two at the same time. Even, for example, City of Miramar has other lab projects under different programs like SRTS in fiscal year 23 that needs to be delivered through lab. It's gonna overlap with some of this, and obviously you're mentioning that you wouldn't allow, and we wouldn't want either, to have more than one or two lab projects going on at the same time. So I assume they're going to be like one-on-one meetings to kind of like go over the projects starting in fiscal year 23, and some of them are going to need to be removed or pushed forward to later years, so they don't overlap, and none of the municipalities have two or more lab projects on the same year.
So, naturally we will meet one-on-one. I mean, that's our standard process for doing LAP, to make sure, that's part of the LAP certification process, make sure that everybody's aware of what the process requires, that the scope's understood, that everybody's on board with that. So yeah, those meetings would definitely occur. And I think each project's going to be handled on a case-by-case basis. I think in general, what we've said is 1 to 2 projects. But we'll definitely work with the municipalities to try and get those programmed appropriately. And then I don't know if Steve, or I know we also have Leslie on the call. If I've misstated something, or just let me know.
John, that's 100% correct. Right, that was the easy part of that question. Yes, certainly we can set something up with City of Miramar and the team there, just to talk through those projects with our LAP team, and then from there, to your point, right, overlap, expectations, and so forth. But as John said, right, we've worked closely with at least MPO staff on what I'll call this transition plan. Projects that at least fiscal year 21 and 22, we were able to at least see where we could work with the locals on the design and CEI phase for those. And then beyond that, John did an excellent job just outlining, some of the considerations that went into kind of that path forward beyond that time frame. But certainly, Salvador, we will follow up with you and just set up a discussion on the projects in Miramar.
Okay, and I guess one last thing, if I don't know if the question is to the MPO or to FDOT. So the resolutions of support and endorsing FDOT to deliver projects for those projects that were programmed after fiscal year 23, those need to be amended, because as I mentioned, those resolutions of support were provided by our city officials with the understanding that DOT was going to deliver the project.
Well, John, this is Bill Cross. Do you mind if I jump in and try to take this question?
Go right ahead, sir.
Okay, so the MPO has been working with FDOT to solidify the list of affected projects, and really beginning next week, our mobility team is going to start reaching out to all of the affected cities to begin that communication, to let you know if you have a project that's on this list of affected projects, and to start to hear, any concerns or any issues, if there's overlaps, too many projects in one year, to get all of that kind of feedback from you. As far as additional resolutions, we're also starting having some coordination with DOT next week on what that might look like and what a logical process for that might be. So those are still things that we're working on. But I just thank you for your question. You're right on point, and you're asking the right questions. And I just want to let you know that we are working on that.
Thank you.
Brian, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Crane, and thank you, Mr. Braun, for your presentation. It is much
All right.
appreciated as always.
All right, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Our next presentation is on the Metro Transportation Engineering and Construction Cooperative, which is a concept that was envisioned by the MPO, and it's going to be presented by our Executive Director, Mr. Stewart, and Deputy Executive Director of Planning and Programming, Mr. Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Koleka, and we're going to kick this off. I actually kind of want to give everybody a little bit of genesis of where this came from. This actually started prior to the SURTAX even being put on a referendum for the for the third time. It was actually a conversation that we had with all the elected officials here in Broward in dealing what was going to be a transportation future where we had thought that there would be significant amounts of money provided to the local governments for construction. We also recognized our great partnerships that we all have had with the Florida Department of Transportation. And, while I would question the number of being 22, I think it's a little bit higher number of projects delivered by, DOT. There was some issues, as, Steve alluded to, on actually getting projects into the ground. And I think John Crane hit it right on the head with it's a sledgehammer approach that works great when you're building the interstate highway system, but not necessarily something that you like to do when you're working with your local government or the residents of your communities. It's hard to hit them in the head with a sledgehammer. You just don't want to do that type of stuff. That said, the MTAC concept was looked to, maybe the delivery for SURTAX, maybe delivery for the federal projects. The county objected to, the process for SURTAX. So, we have now honed down looking at the MTEC group to actually provide federal projects. And we're going to go into a presentation. I'm going to be joined with a presentation with Bill Cross. Bill, you mute yourself. And I guess Bill and I, do we get control of the screen because we have a PowerPoint?
I think Rebecca's going to run them for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, we'll go to the next one. If you can.
Technology just doesn't want to work with me anymore after our board meeting.
It's been a long day. For those of you who joined us and we were on our break, I was actually singing Let's Go to the Lobby, which was an old movie theater song where you go and get your sodas and candy. So, as a break, that's always something good to get everybody moving. Rebecca, are we ready now?
Sure, you might have to do it if you have one.
I can pull mine up. Hold on.
Oh, you know what? I think I could pull it up as well. It's. All right.
I don't know what's going on.
Don't worry, it's about to happen. I feel it.
Peter, were you going to take a crack at it, or you want me to bring it up?
I will take a crack at it. I'm just getting to the slide. Give me a moment here. Sorry, folks. All right. Let's try that.
There we go. Peter, can we go to the next slide, please?
Sure.
Ta-da! So basically in 2018, that's when this whole conversation actually started. We were hosting the Broward League of Cities and the MPO, as well as the Alliance, at our facility to actually have a conversation about how is regional transportation provided, how is local transportation provided, and what is it that we need to do to make our partners, and there's 33 partners here in the region, plus the Department of Transportation, successful in delivering transportation projects in Broward County. That actually created a steering committee that the relevant cities participated in. Can you go to the next slide, please? The first meeting was back in June 2018. We actually had regular meetings with the folks on the committee all the way through early 2020. And that's when we started to approach the Florida Department of Transportation with the concept. After some considerable back and forth with the Department of Transportation, we all recognize that this is not something that the MPO would do, but it's going to be something that the cities could do as a cooperative. So can you go to the next slide, please? So basically we recognize, and the elected officials that sat on that board said smaller municipalities or larger municipalities, you know, have a greater burden in being able to deliver transportation. We recognize with any given municipality, the CECL program, it's just not frequent enough to justify having a permanent resource that goes through the LAP process on an annual basis. That is one of the things. And while I agree with Steve and John, it was a great presentation on the cost. Those cost burdens shift over to the municipal governments, and it's very difficult to justify having consistent resources that know the process. So that's why a collaborative or a cooperative was something that was going to be definitely necessary moving forward to deliver projects. The technical resources that are necessary, as was alluded to by Miramar and by the department, is important, because really, how much can one group take? And that is the bigger question. And then if you start doing like we have done in bundling projects where they border Miramar, they go into Pembroke Pines, they may go into Hollywood, all of a sudden you have another wrinkle to that blanket on how that actually would work. Navigating federal and state reporting requirements are difficult, and consistency and knowledge of what those requirements are super important. Any given other place around the state of Florida, typically our county governments provide the actual service to the local governments and have a certification where the organization itself is certified, not by project, but by the organization. So what MTech will hopefully provide at the municipal level is the ability to provide those resources in a consistent way that will actually be able to make state reporting and federal reporting easy on both the Department of Transportation, on Federal Highway Administration, as well as our municipal partners. Next slide, please. So we looked at different options with the elected officials that served on the committee. Do you do a C Corp? Do you do a corporation? And then we really focused down on the 163 process, the Florida Interlocal Cooperations Act. And the MPO itself was founded on a 163 agreement. That's a unique beast. It allows local governments to pool resources, pool contracts, pool bid processes, all the things that are necessary to actually deliver transportation projects. Next slide, please. So if you look at 163, the area that highlighted is make the most efficient use of their powers by enabling them to cooperate with other localities based on mutual advantages. So mutual advantages are going to be where we're going to try to get MTech to locate, so that way moving forward with our partnership with the Department of Transportation, this mutual delivery service that is shared among all the cities, all 31 cities here in Broward, would be able to move forward with federal projects. Next slide. This 163 is a known legal process for each city. Interlocal agreements set up terms and structures for cooperation. That way there isn't things that are unknown. Everything is spelled out. We're going to be working with the Department of Transportation in the multiple cities and setting this up, so that way everybody's singing from the same hymnal. And then it allows for some flexibility as well for the local governments, because you can have the same team delivering in Deerfield Beach and Coral Springs, and then the following year they can be down in Miramar and Pembroke Pines. Then they can move to Fort Lauderdale and Oakland Park. This is an important aspect of project delivery, and have that flexibility within the structure to allow for this intergovernmental coordination for project delivery to work. Next slide, Bill. So what the subcommittee identified in the benefits, and you know, I'm going to keep singing this until I retire. Centralized engineering experience with design, bid packaging preparation, construction oversight, inspection, and right-of-way, etc. All of those things are going to be within this unit of a city government that will be shared with all the other city governments to centralize things like procurement, efficient, timely delivery, centralized public involvement, because that's one of the biggest aspects that even DOT recognizes, that there's some, not weakness, but there's some room for improvement. And then basically the city's services would, the cities would get a percentage of those services based on their needs for that year. So that way it will retain a staff that can move from place to place. DOT, Federal Highway Administration, would know the people. They'd actually have the consistent rollout, and then it would actually allow for the development of projects that would be as fast as possible delivery. And, and that's one of the things, that it's like the delivery of a LAP project isn't a bad thing. And it's just a matter of figuring out how to get it done and then making it the most efficient way. Bill, can you do the next one? So this whole idea of the Metropolitan Transportation Engineering and Construction Cooperative is basically that centralized delivery process. We have an information sheet that we can share with everyone here, as well as you can share with your elected officials, because this is the genesis. And if you look at the partnerships that are down there, you have the City of Tamarack, Pompano Beach, Plantation, Hollywood, and Lauderdale Lakes. And it's really important to kind of look, or Dania Beach, excuse me. And it's really important for all of us to look at those folks and say, okay, if we start with a collaborative of local governments to put this together, that group can move between those local governments for the construction. Go ahead, Bill. Next slide. So each one of them would be able to actually say, I have a project in Tamarack. That project gets built. That team that built the Tamarack project can move on to Pompano Beach, finish up a project in Pompano, move on to Plantation, move on to Hollywood, and move on to Dania. Everyone will get to know who the team members are and provide consistency and transparency for the delivery process. Next screen, thank you. It's important to note that if a city sets this up and does it with other cities, that they actually create a self-governing board. So those member governments can sit on that board. There's transparency. So the city elected officials know exactly what's going on. They are the representative. City staff will be able to make sure that the cities, each individual cities that they're working on, has the appropriate checks and balances. And it basically allows the organization to self-fund through the membership. And that's one of those things that we look at through the 163 process that's going to be the most important part. And the good news in doing a 163 agreement through municipal cooperation is this is something that is allowable through the LAP process. It's just unique in doing this. So basically the member cities would have an administrative services agreement to cover the insurances, the legal and administrative costs. But there's one thing that is guaranteed out of this is the funding through the federal government through the MPO will continue as long as the federal government funds the MPO process. Next, please. So basically MTech is going to be the ones that do this heavy lift. It's not the MPO, it's not going to be just the city of Pompano Beach, just one person or the other. It's really how we create it. The good news is what John and Steve has said is we have a couple of years to set this thing up for the delivery side. So we're going to be able to work together with the Department of Transportation and all the cities, so those projects that are in year 23 and beyond can start the delivery process with this program and actually provide certainty to the local governments that you're not carrying costs, legacy costs, into generational efforts that would happen. So that way, if you're Dania Beach, or let's just use an example, Christopher Restrepo did a great job in presenting what was going on in Oakland Park. Oakland Park has so many projects, it's a great thing. They've been very successful in capturing the TAP, LAP, all the programs that have been offered through the MPO, CSLIP. And they're gonna need that assistance as well, because as those projects move on and off, then all of a sudden that expertise can move from Oakland Park over to Tamarack, over to Plantation. So next slide, please. So what Bill and I are committed to do is we're gonna actually bring that Mayor's Roundtable Elected Officials Subcommittee back together. And it's probably gonna start next month, the month after. and start having the dialogue of what the cities are going to need to do to set up this program to allow for a unified delivery process here in Broward. Its location, we'll probably do another virtual meeting because it's not a existing board from any structure. And we'll actually figure out how to stand this up together with our partners over at the Department of Transportation, our partners at the municipal government. We'll invite the county to the table. I think we need to also invite any other folks that are necessary. I mean, some of our cities have CRAs. I think they still do. So there's all these different aspects of business improvement districts and even a DDA. Bring them into the process so that way we can see how we can get federal dollars most efficiently into our communities. And also, that'll give us some time to work with the department on the funding side for CEI as well as design. Because there may be some changes in the next, and you know, we're T-minus what, 27 days out from the federal election. If things go the way that they're currently indicated, we think that there's going to be a much more robust transportation bill passed out of Congress in fiscal year 22. That will actually provide more certainty on project funding and allow for the processes and a little bit more of certainty for the department and the district to provide additional resources as necessary for the delivery of projects. And with that, Bill, I think the next one is a questions page, right? And here we are. And by the way, I actually only saw this PowerPoint once. So does anybody in the audience have any questions? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
You have a question, just raise your virtual hand. Okay, I do not see any, so great job, gentlemen. Thank you for that presentation. It's something to look forward to in the near future. I want to thank everybody who presented. Great job on everybody's accord. And I also want to say thank you to our FDOT District 4 partners for their presentation. You've always been a great partner to us, and we enjoy the relationship that we have with you. I want to thank everybody who attended and the board members in particular, because it's been a very long day, but we hope that you take this information back to your commission, talk with your commissioners, talk with your council members, talk with your staff about your interest to deliver projects that will enhance your community. And thank you all for attending today, and have a great day. Be well.
Be safe, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Steve.
Go ahead and
Thanks.
stop recording.
Thanks, everyone. Be well.